T-minus 40 seconds. Everything looks good for launch.
Have you ever fantasized about going somewhere special? Somewhere far from crowds? Off the beaten track? Somewhere out of this world? Is it time to catch a rocket to the Red Planet?
Mars is filled with mysteries. Volcanoes 75,000 feet tall. Huge canyons, 3,000 miles across and 6 miles deep. All kinds of interesting features.
Awaiting you is some of the greatest scenery in our solar system. On a world where water once ruled, then vanished into thin air, where lost microbe empires may still survive underground. We've seen the postcards, and we do wish we were there.
Just the thought of being in this new world, seeing a landscape that no other person had seen before. I think there are a lot of astronauts that would sign up to that.
But don't be fooled. Nothing about going to Mars will be easy. Danger awaits you on this desolate beauty, and perhaps Martians too.
If we find on Mars evidence of a second independent origin of life, that's hugely profound because it tells us right away that life is common in the universe.
Mars, invaded by a robot, and perhaps soon by an Earthling like you.
Would I like to go to Mars? Oh, in a heartbeat. Absolutely. If there was any way for me to be going to Mars, I wouldn't be screwing around with robots. You know, I'd want to go myself.
There has never been a better time to boldly go where no human has gone before. To follow in the footsteps of our robot pioneers and visit the planets of the solar system. It's been said that the first person on Mars is alive somewhere on Earth today. Imagine it's you. What do you need to know? How might you get there, and what should you pack? What are some of the must-see sites, and what should you avoid? Think of this as your personal travel guide to exploring the Red Planet. Mars has always had a mystique. It's one of the easier planets to spot in the night sky. A constant dot of red light moving through the heavens. And now we know for sure that of all the planets, this red, rocky one is the most similar to home. Here are polar caps and sun-baked deserts, giant volcanoes and mighty canyons. Mars even spins at about the same speed as Earth, making a Martian day only about 40 minutes longer than ours. Although it's further out from the sun and takes twice as long to circle it, the long Martian year has identifiable seasons. And what's more, our two planets share a common childhood.
In many ways, it's a sister of the Earth. It was formed at roughly the same time, about 4.5 billion years ago, with a little change here and there. It also was formed of the same sorts of materials, bombarded by comets and asteroids. So it has the same delivery system we have.
Could life have been forged in the same way on both planets? When we sent the first probes to investigate in the 1960s, almost anything was possible.
Originally, in the popular imagination, we thought that Mars might be inhabited by whole civilizations, building canals and so on. And then the Mariner flyby missions really painted a very grim, black and white view of Mars as being barren.
The pictures and data recorded by Mariner 4 revealed Mars to be a cold, barren planet.
Should be coming up on terminal send ignition 5638. SCS is close to vertical.
Still, NASA was eager to look for signs of life. In 1976, the Viking spacecraft arrives from Earth for our first close encounter. And there are still hopes of a welcoming committee. But both Viking spacecraft send back photos of nothing but rocks and sand.
We had cameras, so obviously if there was a yucca plant or I was hoping there'd be a freeway in the distance, but what the main thrust of Viking was actually was some chemical laboratories, and they looked for the chemical signs of life.
Even the dirt seems devoid of life.
There was always a chance that when they were so busy looking for microbes, there could be a large organism looking over their shoulder that they completely missed. But now we have enormous amount of imagery that shows nothing like a large organism. There are no cats running around, there are no bisons, there are no palm trees.
It seems Mars is not the kind of planet that gives up its secrets easily. But if you dig a little deeper, you soon find that this is a world worthy of a closer look. There are some basic things you should know about Mars before leaving home. Most days will be clear and sunny and cold. The average temperature on Mars is as bitter as midwinter in Antarctica. At about half the diameter of the Earth, Mars is a handy size, but it's much less dense than Earth, with about a third of the gravity. Surprisingly, the actual surface area is almost exactly the same as all the dry land on Earth, shrunk together without the oceans. Build a few freeways and you could drive around Mars in a couple of weeks. And driving around Mars is exactly what planetary scientist Steve Squyres has been doing since 2004. Not in person, but via NASA's two off-road robot rovers, Spirit and Opportunity.
Stand by. This time we are 5 minutes, 55 seconds after entry. It looks like nothing I've ever seen before in my life.
For all of us here on Earth, the snapshots sent back by these forward scouts are the next best thing to standing on Mars in a spacesuit.
We very consciously gave these robots some human-like qualities. The cameras are about this high off the ground. They're the same height as human eyes. It's the visual experience that you get from looking at the rover's pictures is intentionally like what you would get if you were looking at the visor of your helmet in a spacesuit on Mars. I really think that if you put somebody on my team who's been part of this mission for so long down at Eagle Crater or on the summit of Husband Hill, you'd look around and you'd say, yeah, that's about right. That's what I expected.
In the 4 decades since our robots first arrived, the once fuzzy ball at the end of our telescopes has steadily focused into a red planet we can understand. And it's not a welcoming place. The problem is the atmosphere is so thin and cold that water exists only as solid ice in the ground or vapor in the air, not as a liquid on the surface. You might see some fine wispy clouds high in the sky, but don't bother bringing an umbrella. The whole planet is drier than the dustiest desert on Earth. and there hasn't been a drop of rain here for millions, perhaps billions of years.
The thing that fascinated me was that we could see valleys snaking across the surface that had clearly been carved by flowing water. So this is telling us that in the past it was different, and not only that, it was different in a way that would have made it more suitable for life than it is today, and that I found truly compelling.
We are very convinced that at one time it was a very hospitable planet with liquid water and enough atmosphere to sustain a climate. And so now we're trying to understand, how did it change, why did it change, and what still might be on Mars.
These are deep Martian mysteries. If Mars and Earth started as sister planets, did life once festoon the Martian surface? Might it still be there? And where did all the atmosphere and water go? Solving these puzzles has challenged our planetary explorers from the moment the first Martian postcards were sent back to Earth.
It's the fact that it is so much like Earth that kind of makes Mars such a special place.
Steve Squires' Martian Odyssey has taken him from pole to pole, visiting those places on Earth that share at least some of the same characteristics. They are extremely dry, extremely cold, or extremely dead. Death Valley is one of his favorites.
This is actually a really important place. It's a place we call Mars Hill. We first found this place about 20 years ago. In those days, the only successful landings that had taken place on Mars were the 2 Viking landers. And they landed in places that looked very much like this.
In order to plan for the current Mars mission and to test the cameras and other equipment, NASA needed a good Mars look-alike. They found it at Mars Hill.
To your eyes, the main way in which Mars would look different from this scene would be the color. The color of the sky, and the color of the rocks, and the color of the soil. The colors on Mars are painted from a very narrow palette.
The color palette here is based on rust, rich in iron oxides. The rocks and soil and the rusty dust are always blowing around in the freeze-dried atmosphere. You won't see any blue skies in the tourist brochures for Mars. Instead, they're amber. Not only do the dust particles add a rosy blush to the sky, they also scatter sunlight in a way that turns the color of the Martian sky upside down to human eyes. Red by day, and blue at dawn and dusk. This is a sunset as seen by Spirit, a cold blue sun dropping over a distant alien horizon. Looking up into the clear, starry skies from the surface, you would see Mars's 2 tiny moons, Phobos and the smaller Deimos. With all the grace of a space potato and barely 17 miles long, Phobos has been targeted as a potential stepping stone for the first human mission to Mars. A test run before attempting the fuel-hungry and risky trip to the planet below. Dreaming about Mars and actually going there are 2 very different things. Mars may be our neighbor, but 35 million miles to the closest point is still a very long way from home.
To put humans on the surface of Mars, someone once joked there are only 3 issues: getting them there, keeping them alive while they're there, and getting them back.
That's a good step. Yeah.
Our space-age dreams of off-world colonies on the Moon and Mars faded with the cancellation of the Apollo program and the last trip to the lunar surface in 1972. It didn't stop us from traveling. we simply switched from astronauts to lower cost